The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
Well, welcome to Meet the Author. My name is Joe Nash. Today we're talking to Steve Lobell about his book, Failing My Way to Success, Lessons of an Entrepreneur. You may recognize the last name because he is the Lobell of Cowan and Lobell. Most of us in the Capital District remember the Cheese Connection and Cowan and Lobell. And for those of us in the area, it's a very interesting book. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
I just wanted to ask you about, since you left the business, you're now in insurance, and you teach business to entrepreneurs at SUNY Albany. You've had a lot of ups and downs. You've had a lot of success, failure, success. So now you're in your mid-60s or so. This book's kind of a memoir, part self-help, part of entrepreneur handbook. Maybe it's therapy for you, I don't know. But why did you decide to write this book sort of right now in your life when you seem to be on your peak now, I guess?
I would call it mid-career, yes.
Okay.
And it came out of a lecture that I gave in entrepreneurship classes going back almost 30 years. And in the early days, it started when I was actually in one of my success periods.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was still in the food business. I was asked by a professor at UAlbany to give a talk to his freshman entrepreneurship class. And out of that, I found it personally stimulating, and the students really liked it. So he kept inviting me back, and then, of course, every year, things changed in my career. And ultimately, I had some really difficult losses and difficult experiences with business failures. So the book morphed into a success story, actually turned into a failure story, and then I found that the real lessons in life are learned from failure rather than success.
Well, do you think, going to the college classes, do you think failure is not sort of people hone in on that as much as they maybe should, that you actually can learn from it?
Sure. I think most people are afraid of failure, and as a result of being afraid of failure may not take risks, may not try. And so in my experience, I found that, and Zig Ziglar said it so well, he said, failure is an event, it's not a person. And I learned that in the depth of a failing enterprise, there were lessons to be learned. And then, of course, the challenge of how do you get yourself out of trouble and move on to more successful adventures and ventures. And so I decided to tell the story to be helpful to people, and the feedback I've gotten out of the experience in the classroom encouraged me to continue to tell the story. I hesitated to make the effort to write the book just out of concern that who was really going to listen to it. Mm-hmm. But over the years, and as I matured and as my business experience developed, it became clear to me that perhaps this was something that would be of value to people, and the best way to get it out there would be to put it in written form.
So in the very beginning of the book, around page 16 or so, you say, if you could take away one thing from this book, the number one lesson is know thyself, which sort of seems, like that everyone would know that, but it really isn't. So tell me, how did it take so long, I guess, to say that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a great question, actually. Well, I found, when you're a young person and trying to figure out what you're going to do in life, you have a certain view of yourself that may be different than what your core skills are. You aspire to do something that you think you would like to do, but you're not matching it up to core skill sets and core competencies. And over the years, since I've had the opportunity to change careers so many times, I've actually been able to observe myself in different settings and different types of jobs. And interestingly, I've now been in the insurance business for over 20 years. If somebody had asked me what I thought about the insurance business before I went into it, On a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of options for me, I would have considered it to be about a -10.
I know. I was going to say, after reading the book, what would your 25-year-old self say to yourself now about you going to be in the insurance business?
Yeah, forget it. Like no way.
So so you're saying it took a while to get those core competencies matched up with how.
Yeah, well, it turned out, you go through life and you have various experiences, and you see what went wrong, but you also start to understand what went right. So of all the things that I really did well, I found, interestingly, was developing relationships and communicating with people.
And one thing you do say in the book, to me, a very sort of key part of the book, when you reach this point you're talking about, you said you took off the blinders and saw who I was, but more importantly, you saw who you weren't.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And again, the core for a business like the one I'm in, which is a service business, is relationships and understanding people and really learning about what they do, and then using that to help protect their wealth, their assets. And I never saw insurance from that perspective until I got into the business and realized that what a great match it was for not only my personality, but my core skill sets.
But all through the book and in all the various businesses you've been in, and with success and failure,
yes,
you mention relationships a lot. You have a knack for forging them and people skills. So I don't want to go as far as to say you seem to be saying they're almost as important as actual business knowledge, but would you say you really got to have the people skills and the ability? Is it almost as much as knowing about business, or do you really start to know about business too?
Well, it's clearly it's a combination. I think where I failed in business was where I thought I could do everything as an entrepreneur. You start a business and you believe, well, nobody could do it as well as I could. But there were aspects of business that I just didn't understand, finance in particular, how money worked, I was very good at marketing and merchandising, and I put out a great product. I built beautiful stores, created great service relationships. I was great at making money, but hanging on to it was another story. And I really never surrounded myself with the right people. In the end, when we did Colonie Lobell, I thought I had the right people working with, but it turned out that the personality fit with Cowan and the expectations between the two of us wasn't as good a match as I expected. And so that business failure was the result really of a partnership failure.
Well, that's too bad, because you write in the book when the store opened, the first day sales was $10,000.
Oh yeah,
first day.
It was incredible. I
remember the store. I mean, it was successful for a while, but in the book, there's this build up to a fracture or something.
Well, it was a fracture of a relationship, interestingly, and that's one relationship I didn't do well at, and I think it was a mutual failure of expectations.
Okay. And then maybe we could talk about failure just for a little bit.
Yeah.
After that, you jumped into a business that you admit in the book you didn't know anything about, the T-shirt.
Well, just imagine my emotional state. I had spent 11 years building up to Colonie Lobell. It was the ultimate business of my dreams. And Dan Cowan's money enabled me to build it. He was expecting certain things of me. I was expecting certain things of him. And ultimately, we built this magnificent business, and many aspects of it were working fabulously. I mean, it was a great brand. We turned out a fabulous product. But we just couldn't manage the finance. There was so much overhead. There were things that we did that, from a business perspective, we should have done differently, I believe. But ultimately, the pressure of the business problems created a fracture in our relationship, and that couldn't be resolved. So it was basically him or me. Losing that business, essentially, I was thrown out of my own business, was an incredible emotional challenge to me, and my self-esteem was right down the tubes. And I was desperate after being kicked out of my own business to own another business. So I was operating emotionally, and I bought another business emotionally without doing good business due diligence, and that was a major failure. And it took, essentially, after writing the book, I realized it took only 20 months to lose all the wealth that it took me 20 years to accumulate.
But you do write in the book about, there's a scene when you're talking to your son where you say, you know, I would rather fail than not try.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to find a lesson in it somewhere for my family, because they were essentially victims of my own incompetence, essentially, at that time. And I really wanted to find an experience lesson that would help them in the future and not just see this as just a total disaster.
Well, you write in the book also that when you're at the college talking to business students, you were sort of said, well, they really love hearing about your personal story. They can really get a lot out of it. It sounds like there was some hesitation of talking about failure so much to students, but apparently, and you ultimately say in the book, the students, they really like hearing about real life, real world experience. They don't really hear that too much sometimes in the classroom situation.
No, not at all. I taught marketing management in the MBA program at the University at Albany and then at Union College for a number of years. And when you read the marketing texts in business school, you realize that you're learning about large, successful companies that have all kinds of resources.
There's always like a case study of Apple or something.
Exactly. and while that's very helpful, realistically, our economy is built on small business. And small business does not have the same kind of resources. We have to bootstrap. We have to do guerrilla marketing. There's just not tons of money available to do market research before you try something. You basically have to take a risk as a small business person, see if it works, see if it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, sometimes it's difficult to recover from your mistakes. So to me, the lessons are, how do you work from a basis of a real entrepreneur who's starting from scratch and does not have major resources?
And then the students, what's the reaction when they hear you speak? You're telling them, when I was in my mid-40s, I was a total failure. I mean, not total, but you really had many.
Pretty total, actually.
So do they sort of appreciate that, or do they say, or do you try to say you can still come back from all that?
Yeah, they relate to it at a very deep level. They relate to things I talk about: my relationship with my father, my relationship with my family. They understand all that, and they see that somebody can indeed fail. I mean, I'm not suggesting they follow my path. I made some really stupid errors.
But they can learn from it.
Well, they learn the fact that even though you have a devastating failure, you can recover from it and build yourself back up and ultimately find success.
Okay, and then one of the ways you found success after we have two more successes to talk about, so we'll get to them. You went into SUNY Albany and became the director of marketing, but essentially you invented that position more or less.
I did.
You knew about marketing, but this is back, colleges today, they're always marketing everything, but we're talking about what, 1990, 89, 90?
1993,
or 93.
actually.
So tell me how you got going on that, and one of your mantras that you used in that apparently was "nobody asked," which you used in that. But
yeah, well, it was fascinating.
Nobody.
Well,
they had no marketing because no one thought of it, or tell us that story.
Well, first of all, I'm an alum of UAlbany.
Okay.
I had a great experience there in the late 60s. I was undergrad 66, graduated in 70. And so I really knew and loved the university. We were the first class that used the new campus.
Okay.
So I had a relationship. Over the years, as I became more successful in business, I got involved as philanthropically with the university, and I was on the University at Albany Foundation Board, and through that got to know the president of the university, Pat Swigert, quite well. I also observed that in those days, the university was not well regarded by the business community, or the majority.
But even though their business department was a very big one, wasn't it?
It was pretty significant, yes, but it was because it's a state university. There was no fundraising in the days that I joined the university.
And again, no marketing department. So this is
there was no marketing department, and as I knew I was getting into some trouble with this screen printing business that I was involved with, I was trying to hatch a kind of a distant plan B. You always got to have a plan B. And just having lunch with one of the other foundation board members, he suggested, if you ever needed to do something else, people would look at your involvement with the university as potentially a good fit. So that kind of stuck in my mind. And then when I was virtually padlocked out of our factory and had to come up with something pretty quickly, that was on a Friday afternoon. That Saturday evening, there was a fundraiser at the university, and I had to screw up my courage and to even attend. And the first thing I did when I got there was I cornered the president of the university and hatched this plan. And I knew at that time I did have good marketing skills because I was a real student of marketing to help build my businesses. And I suggested to him that the university needed a liaison between the university and the business community in order to really tell a better story about what was truly going on of value at the university. He liked the idea, and he said, well, if the vice president of advancement was okay with it, he would certainly consider giving me a shot. He thought it'd be a part-time thing.
But he gave you 6 months, but you turned it into a 5-year job?
It was a 3.5-year job, actually.
And then you ended up raising a lot of money.
Raised a lot of money. I was interim director of marketing for a year, and then there was an opportunity to fill in as interim director of alumni affairs, which to me was a terrific fit. Obviously, I'm an alum, knew a lot of people. And that was a great job. They gave me a building to run, and I had a nice staff and a secretary and 100,000 alumni to work with.
Now, these are the days before colleges were raising significant amounts, particularly SUNY Albany?
It was, well, for SUNY Albany as a state university, it was in the early days of their fundraising effort. That's since changed significantly, as we've all seen. But that was early stage for them, and it was a unique prospect. And then I figured, well, if I needed to earn my keep there. And the advancement division that I worked out of was really responsible for raising funds. So I looked for every opportunity that I could to raise money from companies that did business and benefited from their relationship with the university.
Well, then it sounds like from reading your book, it may have been your final stop. You were going to stay there, but you seem to be up on knowing the trends in the business world, upcoming things. Even go back to your restaurant days, you were up, you were one of the first with the gourmet food and the specialty food and the coffee and carry out dinners for the 2-parent family. But you noticed a trend. Well, tell us about the insurance company and how you got into your little niche there in the insurance.
Well, first of all, the experience at the university was fabulous. I became an adjunct professor in the School of Business, and I was teaching marketing, and then I was observing from inside the university all the great things that were going on. The challenge for me was that I have no academic credentials that would enable me to really advance in the university. I have a bachelor's degree in English, and you really do need more credentials than that to
That's all I have.
Go further. So So I felt I had sort of hit what they call the glass ceiling in terms of advancement. And I was really contemplating, well, how do I either get an MBA or possibly a PhD?
And by then you were in your, 40s or 50s?
1990, it was around 96. I was born in 48, so I was getting up there in age. And 2 kids in private college and so forth. But life was very good there, and I loved it. The founder of Anchor Agency, though, was a friend and mentor and had always
This is where you work now.
This is where I work now, Marvin Friedman. And we were just having breakfast, and out of serendipity and the conversation, it suddenly occurred to me that And I admired Marvin, what he did, how he did it. He was a philanthropist. He was a very successful business person. And it suddenly occurred to me as I was doing some internal thought that I have the appropriate skill sets to potentially be successful in that business. And so I put aside my negative feelings about insurance. Of course, I had very positive feelings regarding Marvin. And out of this conversation, an opportunity appeared to me. I followed up with Marvin, and he felt the same way. And that led to months and months of conversations. Ultimately, had to get permission from my dear wife, who had suffered through these failures.
Yes, your wife comes through as a saint from reading this book here, I should say.
Everybody says that, and it's true. It's true. I never would have gotten anywhere without the support and love, even in our most desperate hour of my wife. And
well, it really does come through in the book.
Yeah, she deserves most of the credit, frankly. But so I looked at this as a real opportunity, and managed to leave the university with some significant funds, so I felt very good about my tenure there. I gave them 6 months' notice, and then with Vivian's permission, shook hands with Marvin and joined Anchor Agency to see if I could make a living in that field.
And you were essentially, in a lot of ways, starting over.
Starting right from scratch.
And you describe in your book how, I guess, the normal stuff wasn't work, but you did find a niche looking at trends. And so tell us about how you got into
yeah, I've always been a niche marketer, which means, you look for a specific field that you have some expertise in, and you really develop that expertise, and that you grow a business from that. So I thought, well, a good niche would be the food industry. And when I started exploring that, I found out that another insurance agent who had a very good reputation was already there. I then related back to my experience at the university, where the internet was starting to grow, the World Wide Web, e-commerce was actually developing. And I said, well, what about that? And I looked at some of the technology being developed here at UAlbany and realized that technology was going to be the future of our economy. Now, that was 20 years ago, and
so late 90s or more.
Late 90s, okay, 97, 98. It was before the Nano College was built, but I saw all the plans for that. So I was able to sort of read the future, read the tea leaves, if you will. And I started hanging out with young entrepreneurs, which I love to do, and going to all the events and the Tech Connects. And
these were all technology entrepreneurs?
Yeah. It started out with information technology and then moved toward other areas of nanotechnology. Hadn't really been a term used yet, but I saw that as an opportunity to get into a niche market where if I applied myself, and I did, I went to all the technology seminars, I learned about their technology, and then I found out that within the insurance industry, there were companies dealing with those technologies that very few other insurance agents were looking at. And,
and a lot of the you write in the book, a lot of these young entrepreneurs, they're starting out. They don't really know that much about business. They're
starting. They don't know.
Some of them not even know they needed insurance. I don't know.
None of them knew they needed insurance, but the landlords of the business incubators required insurance for them to rent space.
Okay, so this became your sort of thing, I guess you could
say. One of the guys I worked with at the university, Gene Schuler, was the tech transfer guy, and so he was referring these young entrepreneurs to me to buy their insurance policies. Now, it was great, but there was no money in it because there were very small insurance policies and very low commissions and so forth. But I believe in people. It's all about people to me. And what I saw in these young entrepreneurs was a future. And in fact, my first tech client, who is still a client, Frank Poor from a company called Commerce Hub, they went from one person 17, 18 years ago. They now have 350 employees. They just rented 50,000 square feet on the 6th floor of the newest Zen building on the nanoscale campus.
Oh, okay.
And just went public.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So my success has been built upon the success of the young entrepreneurs that I engaged with. I mentored some of them, many of them. I'm now fortunate enough to be in the position of being an angel investor with Eastern New York Angels, so I now get a chance also to invest in them.
Okay. Oh, that's right. That is mentioned in the book. Now, judging by all your experiences, some of the things we've talked about, are they listening to the lessons you're trying to impart to them?
Well, I think they're learning from some of them, but after all, everybody's got to make their own mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the lessons are not what to do, what not to do. It's really understanding yourself. That's why I go back to know thyself. Understanding what are your skill sets, and then trying your best to build a team and surround yourself with people who possess the skills that you don't have. Those were the core mistakes that I made in the early days.
Okay. Well, I like the title of the book, Failing My Way to Success. There's a lot of good insights in here. I'll just be telling people, in the future, look for Steve to be having a show here, talking to local entrepreneurs. Can you tell us a little bit, not who you're going to have on or everything, but what kind of show do you think it'll be? Who the kind of people you might be talking to, and some of the topics?
So this book is kind of a door opener. I have been giving the lecture. I wrote the book, and quite a few people, fortunately, have been reading the book, and they like the message. What I've learned over the years is that I've never met a successful person that hasn't had some degree of failure along their road to success. And so mine is just one of many excellent stories. A lot of us in this region, at our core, we're an entrepreneurial region. If you go back to Edison and the origins of General Electric, our DNA is entrepreneurial. We're now in a very wonderful period of time where there's a real renaissance going on, and we are indeed building a new entrepreneurial community. So based on the positive feedback from my lectures from the book, it seems to me we need to tell more stories of other entrepreneurs, and through their failure and success stories, really help educate the next generation of entrepreneurs in the region and encourage them.
Very good. So we'll look for you in this chair.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. The book, the library has a few copies. Can people get it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. It's in the local independent bookstores, Bookhouse.
And we have a couple here at the library if you don't want to buy it again.
And I just published it electronically as well.
Okay,
so
and I didn't get to this, but underneath the title it says Book 1. Is there a sequel on the way? Or?
Well, there could be. You never know.
Okay. So, Life Lessons of an Entrepreneur, Failing My Way to Success, Steve Lobell. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time on Meet the Author.